founder of Zaboda.io. What we do is we place talent from Latin America and Eastern Europe into businesses. So this is remote talent. We're mainly servicing agencies, coaches, consultants, and then some larger corporate clients as well.
If you had to give advice to an entrepreneur who's kind of early in their journey, how would you kind of fortify their mindset for the future path of, I would say, turbulence that they're going to go through?
If you always put in the work, it will figure itself out eventually in some way. I've always had opportunities where maybe they're coming to a close and that next opportunity is just perfectly slotted right there because of something I did in the beginning of the previous opportunity. So you may not know why you're going through some of the actions. You may not know why you're learning some of the skills, but it will pay off later in different scenarios.
And I feel like there's a dichotomy out there that says you don't have to work, but we also expect the world to be able to give us all the opportunities, but nobody's willing to actually do the work. And so it's so easy to win today because everybody's so okay with being so shitty. And it's just like an interesting dichotomy that I constantly battle in my head about.
I think there's more of a season of sacrifice. But what I've realized being further into the sacrifice is it's not really a sacrifice because I enjoy it. I like working a lot. I think work-life balance doesn't really exist. And a lot of people who speak about it, I feel like they're trying to justify not doing the work, not doing a lot.
All right, guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Hart Hustle Podcast. I'm excited because I've got Ben Morone with me here today, and we're going to be talking about his heart and his hustle. So Ben, why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about kind of your company in general, what you guys do, and then we can kind of talk about your origin story and everything else that led you to kind of build this amazing business.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me on the show. My name is Benjamin Morone. I'm the founder of Zaboda.io. What we do is we place talent from Latin America and Eastern Europe into businesses. So this is remote talent. We're mainly servicing agencies, coaches, consultants, and then some larger corporate clients as well.
I'm really interested to kind of dive into your business because the remote world that we live in today has completely changed the way we approach business, but also the entrepreneurial spirit as well. Back in the day, we used to have buildings where we had team members showing up, and now we can leverage global talent to be able to execute on our business vision and our overall mission. And so I want to kind of talk about how you got down this path, because it doesn't seem like starting this business, having global talent, being able to recruit, obtain, retain talent is something that everybody kind of stumbles into, if you will. So why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about your early entrepreneurial journey? Have you always had this entrepreneurial knack, or where did this kind of come from?
I think the entrepreneurial knack kind of came from conversations with my dad about his journey as a kid being like a paper boy in Detroit. And so how he would expand and get other routes and buy routes and get up early and do the kind of paper boy activities. And I lived in Montana, and eastern Montana where I lived was very, very spread out. It's very, very rural. And so there's no opportunity for me to be like a paper delivery person. Like I would need to be able to have a driver's license. I would need to have a car. There's no way that I could have some sort of entrepreneurial venture like he did in his childhood. And so until when I got to high school, I was like 15, 16 at the time, I started selling snacks in school. I wanted a little bit of like a side hustle. And so there were other teachers and people selling snacks, and they were selling sodas for $1. And this is a sign of the times because it was like 50 cents, 25 cents. But we would sell Shasta soda. We'd go buy Shasta soda from the dollar store, load it up in our cars, and then basically just fill one locker with the soda, the goodies, the snacks. It was like Fruit Smiles from Walmart, Cosmic Brownies, like the Little Debbie ones with the multicolor sprinkles. And then we just sell those during the passing periods, sometimes in class too. Like we'd get like a Snapchat or something like that and leave and ask to go to the bathroom and then go sell these products. And so from there, we kind of snowballed into the online space. We realized, okay, we're really limited that we can only sell during these hours, and summer was coming up. And so it's like we had this little business that was going on, but we're going to have 3 months of no sales, like nothing to do. Like all the fun that we got from this business is going to end. So we need something that's online. So we decided to basically just search like how to make money online. And this was right when drop shipping was a big thing. This is when like Facebook ads. You could basically zip code target and print money. Like this was kind of the good old days for internet marketing, right around like Ty Lopez time, those types of things.
I want to hop in real quick. I want to ask
Yeah.
you, who was your team back in the day? So it's just like you and a couple of the homies who were just like, hey, we could start making money by selling snacks. Did you guys do any type of like, this sounds weird, but like market research to be like, everybody loves Shasta, everybody loves these cosmic brownies? What were you kind of doing back then?
So it was my best friend, Michael. He's still my best friend now. And so it was just the two of us, and we just cleaned out one of our lockers and put everything into like one locker. So we shared a locker for school, and then we had a big like snack locker. The teachers were selling like Coca-Cola, like Dr. Pepper, Pepsi, just kind of all the like the brown caramel colored sodas. And we were like, oh, well, we should be able to get like orange soda. So Shasta has a Shasta like orange, a very creative name, but it's basically that, right? Then they had like a tiki punch, which is this red fruit juice, the stuff with pounds of red 40 in it, like very bad stuff, but very addicting. And so we were like, let's do that. Tiki punch was a bestseller, and we just kind of started taking some gambles. There really wasn't that much market research. We thought, oh, we should also start trying to sell fruit snacks and cosmic brownies and stuff. And the margins weren't as good on those products, but it was very easy to be able to sell a lot of them. And so there wasn't much, I would say, like critical thought. It was more just like, oh, in the dollar store, the brownies are next to the Shasta. So we thought maybe we could sell those. Like it was more that level.
Man, that's amazing, because I think about like you guys had a very intuitive ability to kind of fill some of the gaps. If everybody else is selling that, caramel sugar, then you're like, hey, we need to go with orange. We need to go with cosmic brownies. And that's just like a really cool way to innovate, but fill gaps. But also you must have had kind of like in the culture of the school must have been okay with you guys doing this stuff as well. Or was this kind of like on the super low where people were sneaking out during class, entering in your homie's locker and then like pulling out stuff? And it was all like trust-based system.
So in the beginning, it was very like low key. And then as it got bigger and bigger, my school was maybe 300, 400 kids. So it wasn't a very large school. And so word spread fast. It was like the first 2 weeks, then everyone kind of heard about what we were doing. We were sophomores at the time. And so from there, eventually the school got involved because a teacher basically kind of ratted on us and was like, they can't be doing this. This is distracting our class, because our lockers were right outside, like it was like an English teacher or one of those teachers, like their classroom. And so people would see like us out there like selling, and then they'd want to go to the bathroom and like sneak out and buy snacks from us. And so it was, I guess, disruptive. I see her point. It was a religious school. And so what happened is we got pulled to the principal's office, and they started talking to us about this. And I remember having this just strike of genius in this moment, and thinking, this is a religious school. What if we just tithe? What if we just chop off 10% and give it back to the school and whatever they're doing? So that's what we did. I remember the principal talking to me and trying to have a conversation. And I was like, well, what if we just give you 10% for like your charitable like contributions, like whatever you want to give it to. If you want to give it to the school and keep it and buy some, you're not going to be able to buy many textbooks, maybe one, but like, like whatever you want to use it for. And he said, yeah, we can like donate it. And so from there, we just kind of cut them in the last like half of our business, and everything was coin based, pretty much like dollars, low bills. Like we would never get over a $10 bill. It was always like $5, $1, or like 10 dimes or a bunch of quarters. And so I had this little like dust bag that I kept all these quarters in, and then we just counted it out, and we kept all the bills, and then we just would give them all the coins, and they would have to just kind of sort through them.
Oh man, that's amazing. Cutting in the organization. Do you know what I mean? Be like, hey, we all want to play here. We all want to win here. So principal, how about I just give you 10%? What a strategic move to keep the business alive, man. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Man, so I want to kind of pivot into, I cut you off there. So let's kind of talk about the internet entrepreneurial space, Ty Lopez, those type of inspirations. So you guys start thinking about, let's just start using the internet to create scale, because 300 students isn't enough for us. So let's talk about these early days of kind of getting into that internet space.
So we originally decided to start some sort of like clothing company and like drop shipping, like print on demand, just playing around with the most like basic designs in like Canva, like just like zero graphic skills, just looking on AliExpress, what's working. And so we had a little bit of success with that. It was more just like local things, maybe like my mom buying a t-shirt and some friends of my mom, like that type of stuff. And then a couple like Facebook ad sales. And we were really trying to push on paid traffic. That's what all the kind of gurus were telling us at the time. And so we tried to crack paid traffic. But when you're 16, spending $20 a day on a Facebook ad is like pretty scary, I would say, especially when you have like $2,000, right, in your collection of companies, and so, or your little bank account pooled together. And so we were like, if we're spending all this money on Facebook ads, but we're only selling these products and we're getting like an $8 margin, $5 margin, like not that much, why don't we just sell like a larger product? And is this a service? Like, we didn't really want to like fulfill, we didn't like know anything. I didn't have some like SEO ability or like Facebook ads ability or recruiting ability. I didn't have those skills yet. And so we're like, well, private schools, it's $10K a year to go there. It's $20K a year to go there in some locales. So what if we just put up like Facebook ads, zip code targeting, because we know that's working, target people above 30, mainly women, to come to like enroll their children in schools. And so what we did is we basically boosted some posts. We did some really basic Facebook ad stuff and then got a couple of students for a private school. And so then we're like, oh, wow, like we're Facebook ads gurus at this point. Like we thought we were, on top of the world, because it was like 8 or 9K for a student for the year. Right. So like, wow, we just made this school $20,000, and we were like, minds blown. And so then we decided to start getting clients in other places. So I went to like D7 Lead Finder. I went to LinkedIn and started scraping leads, doing it manually. And this was before I knew anything about like Upwork or Fiverr or paying for some of this manual stuff. And so I just grabbed a huge Google sheet. I probably still have it in one of my old drives, and just started calling different schools, emailing different schools, like cold emailing a bunch of different schools. And then I was getting ready to go to college. And so we kind of still had this business. It's kind of floundering along. And I went to University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota. So in that network, there's a lot of like private schools where in Montana, it's 8K for a student. But in those places, it's 20, 25. Like it was like almost college level. It was kind of insane. So we're like, why don't we just start targeting these people? We never got any of those very high product or high market schools. But from there, we were like, okay, this is kind of working. It's a unique niche. And then we got involved with a couple like masterminds, just kind of like learning like what's out there. And then we went to kind of university. So kind of like shut down, I would say, in the very beginning of university. We didn't really have any clients. We were just there reaching out to people. I remember having conversations on LinkedIn, running automated campaigns, and just speaking to business owners. I didn't have anything to sell them, but just like networking with them. And I would take probably 2-3 calls a day at least on top of my classes, just meeting random people. And that's part of the reason I have like a good LinkedIn network now, is just because back then I was the 18-year-old kid being like, how can I be of service to these business owners,
Man, it's crazy to me because when I think about like my father was an entrepreneur, and my father was somebody who was going door to door selling vacuums back in the day.
Wow,
when I think about the generation that you came from, there was so much opportunity that came from the ability to be able to leverage the internet to be able to create scale. And it's just wild for me to think about how you guys positioned yourselves as the ability to go out and I would say obtain students, because that was a higher ticket margin. And then you guys turn that into, now we're going to start scraping LinkedIn. It's just like amazing to think about how technology in itself is a platform that gives us so much opportunity today. It's just wild for me to kind of think about your entrepreneurial journey compared to just like a couple generations ago. I mean, a couple years ago, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you ever kind of like sit in that space to realize like the vehicle that you're in is just so much more powerful than having to do the door-to-door sales and like kind of network around the neighborhood? Like your pop's example, or as an example?
Yeah, definitely. I see it almost even more in the recruitment company that I own, because prior to pandemic, remote work was like, it was coming around, but it was more like, the digital nomad, like hipster would go live on a beach somewhere, and 4-hour work week is way to kind of success. Right. Mm-hmm. And with the pandemic hitting, now everybody talks about remote work, and it's like, back to office. Like, what's the culture? many candidates just want remote stuff. And now there's a bunch of issues with commercial real estate because there's no one buying these or, leasing these big offices. And like, we have a bunch of dead space. Like, what are we going to do? And so I really think that with that recruitment company, I think about that a lot more. I think about, okay, like this was kind of a blessing in disguise, because I probably wouldn't have gone to start a recruitment company, a remote recruitment company, if COVID hadn't happened. I didn't have that mindset shift about like, I was sitting in Zoom classes in university and I was like, like there's got to be a way to work and do this. Like people were all at home, not in offices. I think it really opened up the world to remote work.
I mean, it seems like very early on you were willing to take risk as well. And I feel like being able to see around corners is where the biggest opportunity comes. I mean, I told you in our previous conversation, but I started a telehealth company back in 2014 because I was like, dude, this is where technology is going. And people need to start believing in this. Unfortunately, nobody did for like 5 years. And then the pandemic hit and everything changed overnight for us, which was crazy. But I want to kind of talk about, the process of you now being located in Poland. So from Montana, from a small school, how do you get the balls to be able to make the jump to go across the world to be able to kind of do this stuff as well?
So I was fortunate enough, and this is kind of a funny story, but what happened was in March 2020, that's when the pandemic really like kicked off, right? And I had plans. I was like, I'm going to go to like Europe. I've saved up some money. Like I'm going to go on a spring break and just see what's over there. I'm just going to like solo send it. And I don't really remember discussing that with my parents, but I was like, okay, I'm going to just go and explore it, right? But what happened was COVID kind of hit, and I was like, okay, well, I can't really go over there. And so I stayed inside of the US, traveling around the US during like when COVID was happening. I got a remote job. I was working like a sales role during that time at a little tech company. So I decided, let's go to Europe at some point just to go see what's over there. I found a super cheap like round trip ticket from, I think it would have been Minneapolis at that point. And it was like $750 to go to Croatia for like a week and a half. And so I was like, that's insane. It was, sometimes there's a lag with the flights where it's like 2 weeks before, if you're going to fly international, they have unsold tickets. So you can like can basically scalp and get really, really cheap tickets. And so it was basically that kind of scenario. And so I had looked at going to Florida instead to visit some family, and it was like $900. But I was like, I could go to Croatia for $750. So I'm going to go to Croatia. Like, what's over there? And so I went over there. It was actually my birthday is around spring break. So I had turned, would have been 21 or 22 there in Croatia. I just kind of celebrated by myself. I was like, oh, it's kind of a cool vacation. Came back and then focused on getting through school in 3 years instead of 4. And then I decided to go back and just explore. At this point, I'm working in a different role in a different company. I'm with my boss. I was an appointment setter. So I was basically setting to this account executive. And he was like, I want to travel. I've stayed in Canada because it's been the pandemic. And I'm bouncing around a little bit here in the story. But he came from Canada and he was basically locked down, not allowed to leave his house for like a couple of years. So he was like, I need to just go anywhere. And so we made up a little list, hit 4 or 5 different countries in summer of 22. And then I was like, oh, we should just see how much it is to like live here. Everything's super cheap in some of these countries we're visiting. And so that's kind of how I got the bug. And my alternative was going back to live in Montana. And at that point I hadn't built a business. And so I was like, well, what am I going to do in Montana? Like the biggest industries are agriculture and like oil. And I'm not from like that background. So I'm like, what would I do there? And so that's kind of how I got into spinning up a little bit of the company and trying to go overseas.
Man, that jump is really interesting to me. One of the things because I grew up in Michigan, so right outside of Detroit. And so when you talked about your dad being from Detroit and running the paper route and stuff like that, I was like, dude, I have an affinity for Detroit, but I'll never go back there. One of the things that my mom told me when I was graduating from high school was I was debating like, where should I go to college? And she was like, Keenan, get as far away from here as possible because there's so much more to the world. And so I think you kind of have a similar mindset with like, Montana's not going to serve me. And you actually chose to go to the other side of the world. And it's just crazy to think about how so many people are like scared to leave their hometown and actually make that jump to a new community and a new culture. And so I want to kind of ask you, what was it about kind of the European culture that made you stay? Why do you love it there so much?
Well, I guess it's a couple things. One, when I was building a business or thinking about building a business, I wanted to give myself the max amount of hours to succeed that I could put into the business. So I'm 6 hours ahead of the East Coast. Most of my clients are probably Central Time, Mountain Standard. So they're, 7, 8 hours behind me. I can work on operations and all these different types of things and like do the learning, the skill stacking, figuring out how to run Facebook ads better, how to manage people, how to actually recruit talent. I can focus on all the skill building and then do sales, client communication in the back half of the day. So it enables me to work like a lot more. And so that's part of the reason I decided to jump across the world and get to kind of the center of the world and have that time zone difference. The other side is I like to be able to kind of travel and have a little bit of a leisurely lifestyle, especially in the mornings. Yes, I'm able to like work all day, but until, midday, noon, 1 p.m., I don't have clients contacting me. I don't have pretty much anything on my phone because all my friends are back in the States. So I don't really have any communication coming in. So it's kind of like being up super early in the morning. If you ever get up at like 4 or 3 a.m. and you're just like quiet and working. So it was very cool to be able to experience that like every single day, that kind of like deep work time. And so the leisure side of it, the time difference, and then I like to travel. So I like to be able to bounce to like in Italy for, $200 round trip, $250 round trip. You could go to Finland, Norway, like kind of wherever in Central Europe is 2 hours away from me here in Warsaw. So that was part of it. I wanted to really be able to get through a bunch of countries and just visit them and like see what's there. Because some of the countries I've been to, it's just like, well, who's been there? Like it's very, very like random. And they're good, like they're fun, like talking points and fun stories. And so that was part of it as well. I don't think I like to travel as much anymore. I'm kind of burnt, but that's part of the reason.
How do you kind of, this is an interesting topic to me because I feel like I connect with entrepreneurs like you because I'm building a business that is a money printing machine that gives me the opportunity to do other things in life. So what do you kind of think about this dichotomy of people who say working is evil, working is bad today, especially when you can kind of stack skills like you were talking about and become like the best version of yourself? Do you kind of vibe with that work-life balance narrative that's being told out there today? Or do you kind of lean into the side of like, there's a season of sacrifice that we have to get shit done that allows for us to do things later in life? What's kind of your perspective on that?
I would say I probably lean towards the latter. I think there's more of a season of sacrifice. But what I've realized being further into the sacrifice is it's not really a sacrifice because I enjoy it. I like working a lot. Like I like actually like making an impact for my clients, helping them grow, like getting people new jobs. People get really excited when they get a new job. And although that like I'm self-employed and I run my own business, people get so happy when they get like a new job. And so that's something I like being able to serve and keep doubling down on work that produces those types of results for other individuals. And so I don't know. I think work-life balance doesn't really like exist. And a lot of people who speak about it, I feel like they're trying to justify not doing the work, not doing a lot. And that may seem kind of like mean, but you never want to like overwork yourself, but your internal clock, like if there's no shame in taking a break every once in a while. If you're super stressed, you can't work 24/7. That's part of the stuff with my company is we can help you work 24/7. It's just not you doing the work. You can split it up among a team in multiple different time zones.
Yeah, man, it's really interesting to me because I see a lot of kind of like I don't want to like be that old dude because I'm 33 years old who kind of like throws cast and throws shade at like Gen Z. But there's a lot of narrative that we see on social media today about like, you shouldn't have to work 40 hours a week. You should work 4 days a week. That's something that's happening here in the United States. There's a lot of bills being like proposed that we should have a 4-day work week. And it's like, with the economic situation in the United States and across the world in general, unless you're willing to put in the work and actually find a job and a passion that you're passionate about, it's very difficult to be able to justify the work-life balance. And I feel like there's a dichotomy out there that says you don't have to work, but we also expect the world to be able to give us all the opportunities, but nobody's willing to actually do the work. And so it's so easy to win today because everybody's so okay with being so shitty. And it's just like an interesting dichotomy that I constantly battle in my head about because like you, I love working. It's something that I really find joy in. And I kind of have been playing with the idea, if you will, of like work-life balance, or maybe it's work-life integration. But when
Hmm.
you are passionate about something, you have so much more energy to show up and do the things that you want, especially when you're having a positive impact. And I feel like more people need to get onto that. But maybe there's a lack of accountability. There's a lack of like taking that leap like you've done a couple times in life to kind of figure stuff out and stack those skills that makes you more valuable to the marketplace.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
How do you kind of balance relationships in your life? Because I know that you're a good looking dude for everybody who's watching the show today. So it's like, do you have the relationships that you're still trying to find, or like, what does kind of like your social life look like out there?
Yeah, so I have a girlfriend. We've been dating for just over a year now. Social life over here is pretty good. I would say one of the one things is a lot of the Europeans I'm friends with here, they work on European hours, and so they're done at 5 p.m. Europe time or 4 p.m. Europe time. But that's 10 a.m. in the States. Like I'm still working, right? And so I think it limits me from being able to just hang out randomly on a Tuesday after work. But if you have abundance of anything, it becomes less valuable, right? So if I only have the weekends to spend with some friends, it's super valuable. I cherish those relationships more. It's like when I'm back in the States, like I'm only back in the States 2, 3, maybe 4 times a year. And so I really spend family time during those times. And it's just so much more like rich and enjoyable. I never have a mindset around like family and the holidays where it's like taxing. It's always like, I'm not here 90% of the year. So it's very enjoyable to be close with them. So that's how I kind of look at my relationships.
Yeah, one of the things that I was really inspired by the last time that we talked is you talked about your ability to kind of like delegate. So I know that the entrepreneurial journey for a lot of people involves me doing all the work all day. I have to do everything. So why don't you kind of talk about the importance of delegating to a team and how you've been able to kind of free up some of your time? Because you, as the founder of your company, you can't be doing all the work all day. So how do you kind of develop that mindset to be able to push trust to other people and kind of let them
Yeah.
do the job as they need to get done?
Yeah, so a couple things. You need to multiply yourself. You have, the same 24 hours everyone else does, but it's really about the leverage. And there's several different ways to do it. There's, capital, there's the code. So if you have like softwares, and there's that human capital as well. So that's human resources. That's people actually doing work, and you're able to duplicate yourself with that. There's also content. I know that's like the fourth one, that basically, I know you're big on YouTube and socials, people constantly viewing your stuff. It's doing work for you. You have to shoot a YouTube video once. It's in there in perpetuity, constantly getting views every single day, bringing people into your business. That's another aspect. But really, you need to build leverage. And one of the best ways to do that is through having people working with you on your mission. And so you can stay a freelancer, but you're only ever going to be able to get to like here with your potential. And some people are like okay with that, and they're okay with the freelance lifestyle. They don't want to build a big business. That mindset maybe never really made sense to me. I remember being a kid and meeting a lot of people who are like, oh, I just want to have my business here. I'm sure there's personal reasons and different things like that maybe I didn't miss. I didn't have context when I was that young. But for you to be able to really build and reach any dreams or make an impact, you have to be able to delegate yourself. So when you view it through that light, it's a must. It's not oh, maybe I'll think about this. Like you need to actually be able to delegate. If you don't get that right successfully, your business is not going to grow. It's going to stay a 1 to 10 head count on LinkedIn forever. It's never going to grow past that.
Yeah, my question for you is when you're thinking about scaling, let's talk about kind of like your first key hires, because I know a lot of people who watch the show are often thinking about like, how do I get out of just like the
Mm-hmm.
key man risk of me doing everything? So when you think about strategically growing your team, what are some of the first key hires that you made to be able to create the scale that you kind of have now?
So it's always going to depend on the business, but really the order that I like to do things in is remove the founder, if it's a service business, from the fulfillment first and sales last. Why this way? A lot of founders want to almost like run from the sales. Maybe they're not confident. I'm not a salesperson. Like that's something that gets thrown around a lot, especially with product heavy people and maybe developer heavy people. But being close to your clients and being able to hear objections and get actual feedback from the market will help you create a better product faster. If you're able to create a better product faster, you will beat all of the competition, right? So you need, as the founder, you need to be as close to your customers and contacts in the market as possible. So you don't want to remove yourself from sales first because of that, But also, if you bring in someone who needs some extra training, they don't really know how to sell the product because you don't really know how to sell the product, you haven't spent the time learning, then nobody's going to sell the product. You're not going to actually get money in the door and your business will die. And so those are two reasons you don't want to bring in or delegate sales first. I like to do fulfillment first because it allows the founder to be able to focus on the actual sales, the marketing. Maybe it's the content creation. Maybe it's just genuinely thinking, how do we position this offer? Being able to have time back where you can think, okay, strategically, how am I going to build this business? What's the landscape look like? What are the trends in the market? Like, who do I need to meet? What connections do I need to make? What media appearances do I need to make? That's the way a founder should be thinking, not being like, okay, we just signed a new client. Now, like, I need to send out this document and then I need to like start working on this. Like, no, you need to delegate that first. And so whatever the business is with fulfillment, for recruiting, obviously it's doing a lot of the recruitment work. That was one of the first hires that I had made. I had a project manager first, but obviously the recruiter's a massive help for that. If you're a cold email agency, it's someone who's doing a lot of inbox management, managing the active leads, maybe doing the strategy, maybe hopping and communicating on calls with clients, client facing, like customer service, those types of things. Removing you from those aspects, and then sales last, building a sales team or whatever way works for you on the sales side. That's kind of the order I like to do things in.
How'd you come to that order?
Experience and trying out other ways in my own business. I tried to have sales reps outsourced before I really knew what ICP I was going for as a business, and it didn't work. It wasn't successful for all parties, right? And so the thing that happened is it's like our sales dropped and it hurt, and this person felt like they were not doing good at their job when really I didn't set them up for success in the proper way, and that was my mistake. And if I knew it differently, I would have done it a lot differently. So I realized that. I just kind of reflected on my own failure, and then talking with prospects who were stuck in probably like a 10 to 20K a month mark, and they're founders, and maybe they have like a technical VA, part-time VA, someone to like help out as like a contractor that maybe they got from Upwork or Fiverr. And they'd want to remove themselves from sales. And I noticed they were almost like running from that instead of removing themselves from fulfillment. They were good at fulfillment. They were confident at fulfillment. They liked fulfillment because they were good at it. So they wanted to just kind of hide in that work and hide in that busyness of like, well, it takes 10 hours to fulfill for a client. I have to do it. Instead of taking 5 hours to build training and train someone on it and how to do it 90%, 95% as good as you, or just hiring someone who already kind of knows how to do that, and you focusing on sales and skill stacking, getting those kind of next skills that we talked about, it just didn't make sense. It was better to do it that way.
Yeah, man, I think about a lot of people who are starting businesses and trying to do the process of sales. And I want to kind of dive into that hiding mindset. Why do you think it's so easy for us to kind of hide in the work that we're good at instead of kind of developing the skill sets that are necessary to help us scale? Because I feel like a lot of the stuff that people suffer from is not the inability to do, but it's kind of like a belief system that comes along with that process.
Yeah, so I think they want to hide in the work they already know how to do, because they see everywhere on social media that they need to be working 24/7. They think about the work-life balance when it's like, no, it really matters what you're actually like working on. The person who is working 14 hours a day on something they already know how to do and they're just doing it, yeah, they're working kind of like hard. You're like, that's long hours, but really they're just not actually like progressing. They're just doing like a task, A to B, B to C. Like they're working on basically like an assembly line. They're not creatively thinking. They're not kind of challenging themselves to the next level. And I see that a lot. As I'm not sure what the programming is from the world and what content sources they're getting their information from. Maybe it's just some natural fear as well. But that's kind of the trend I see. And I try to figure out how I can break through that belief, because you and I both know with sales, a lot of it's belief management and making sure someone has the right mindset to make a decision. It doesn't need to be to sign up with your service, but just a better mindset on how they think about growing their business.
I mean, the belief perspective and being able to break that is something that I find myself having to do a ton in sales, because when you come across objections, you have to challenge those ideas and step one closer to helping somebody make a better decision. So when you're kind of interacting with business leaders and you're trying to help place talent. Do you ever find yourself having to break certain beliefs about this individual's not going to be able to do the job like I can do it?
Mhm.
Like, what is kind of your process of helping them leverage talent as another level of leverage?
It's when I didn't have case studies, it's much more difficult. Now I have 25 plus case studies with some larger brands, so I can point to that and be like, this is how they did this and got XYZ result. So that really helps. But there's been some interesting ones. One gets from our corporate clients, we get this a lot more, is they feel like if they bring in outsourcing or they label it that way, or a foreign team member, that then people are going to start losing jobs. They're scared that, hey, this is a finance play. They're going to start axing Becky, who's been here for 20 years, right? Who's the secretary, right? And that's something that was a unique objection we've got a couple times. And really with those businesses, there's more to the story there. There's probably cuts that need to be made before we even get involved, right? And I want them to kind of figure out those things and make those cuts on their own schedule before they bring in outsourcing. Because just like if I'm selling a software, if people don't want a new software, they're not going to actually implement it. They're not going to adopt it. They're not going to use it. And then whoever bought the software, the company, is going to be like, wow, this is a waste of money. No one used this. No one liked this. I don't want a bunch of people in a company to negatively think about their new team member or the concept of outsourcing or what it can really do for a company to help them. And so basically, I don't want those scenarios to happen. So we try to limit that as much as possible.
I mean, I think about there's a generational shift that you're kind of the perfect avatar for. We've got business leaders who are talking about leveraging international talent to help our businesses run more efficiently. But there's also a mindset of, I would say, legacy leaders in business who often think that team members who come from the outside can't get this job done as easily, or they're not going to do it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, it's a really interesting time to kind of have to be the belief breaker, if you will, that you are, to help people leverage talent that they can leverage from across the globe. Because like we talked about in the very beginning, the landscape of business has completely changed. And it's just so interesting to have to kind of fight some of those internal stories that we tell ourselves about talent from other marketplaces not being able to fulfill on our businesses. This is one of the things that, I'm consistently doing in our team, is talking about bringing in talent from Latin America as an example, who can be a part of our remote team, because we're already displaced across the United States. And so why wouldn't we be able to use talent that is as talented, but also doesn't cost us as much to be able to fill on these things? And so I want to kind of talk about, what do you think the best characteristics from a belief perspective, but also the characteristics of leaders who you engage with are that help you kind of get your best customers and the best results?
I would say a growth mindset of someone wanted to try something new to reach the goals, someone who's open to new ideas. And it's not just being open to our solution, but if someone is open to new ideas, whoever we place in that role, they have past experience. They've worked for maybe Fortune 500s. They have different ideas and frameworks through their work experience that they can apply into their new role. I don't want to place someone in a company it's very rigid and they don't welcome new ideas, because even if the business owner's happy, like, yay, we got this placement, the actual person we place will not be happy on the long term, because they're going to feel like no one listens to them, no one cares about their ideas. That person's going to stay for 6-7 months and then leave. And so I think that openness, that growth mindset, that kind of culture of being inclusive is something that we look for sure when we're vetting our clients. I mean, we're not going to work with everyone, and that's not just a weird like status, try to like sales mind game. It's really that I don't want to put someone in a role that they don't like. I don't want someone to come to me and say, Ben Morone, I didn't like this role. You would put me in this role. I didn't feel like I had a choice. Like that's my nightmare mode. If you had asked me about that, I don't want someone to come back and say those types of things.
Yeah, I mean, I know when we talk about remote talent, a lot of organizations often start to explore VAs, and then they start moving into personal or permanent talent. So I want to kind of talk about your journey as kind of exploring kind of the VA space and then moving more into the permanent roles. What was that kind of shift like for you guys, and why do you feel like it was so much more valuable?
So when I first got started, we were sourcing Philippines, Bangladesh, Southeast Asia virtual assistants, like part-time, very basic, like copy paste tasks. A lot of stuff that probably now you can do with a lot of AI tools. And so that's one thing is it's bad to be in a business that's just going to automatically be replaced with some of those tasks. And so that's part of the reason we had left that. The permanent roles, the full-time roles, those are the most like favorite ones to place, because that person is able to build a reputation at that company, make a lasting impact at that company over a long period of time. And so we realized, okay, we actually have more impact on these full-time roles, even though we place like less of them. And we have a bunch of people who just want a part-time VA to like check emails and do something for like 2-3 hours a day. Those 2 to 3 hour a day clients are a lot more of like a headache with the logistics of everything, because if a VA has like 4 clients at 2-3 hour slots, like it gets pretty hectic, and there's a lot of different like communication issues that can like happen because someone wants the VA to respond now. And it's like, that was kind of a headache that I didn't want to go into. I just thought, hey, it's a lot better to go this permanent placement route. This person can make a lasting impact. These people can see the benefits of outsourcing and hiring global diverse talent. And so that's just kind of how it folded into us getting into more permanent placements.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. If we're trying to create sustainability and also manage the reputation of your organization as well, I feel like having those long-standing relationships with that talent that's going to be able to be someone who's going to have a long-lasting impact in the organization is super important as well. What do you kind of think about from the reputation of your business perspective being a catalyst? Because I focus a lot now on brand, and I think a lot of organizations are focusing on brand. So how do you kind of leverage, I would say, the reputation of your brand and it being a catalyst for your guys' success in the future?
So with some of the brand stuff, it's pointing to numbers a little bit, but it's also the values and the case studies. Not just a case study that is a faceless case study, but really a case study with a founder who was in some serious pain. And then now they've had that transformation through our service, and they're in a totally different business landscape. Their mindset's totally different. They've gone through not just a business change, but a personal change as well. Leveraging case studies like that really helps with some of the brand stuff. I would say we're still developing a lot of brand, as we're only a year and a half old. One of the things, there's always kind of negative things you're moving against. Some people don't like outsourcing. It can get kind of dragged around on LinkedIn. And so turning a negative into a positive is something that we're looking into more and more.
I feel like you guys are also really well positioned for the future, because as you know, I speak to HR leaders as an example all the time on another podcast. And something that we talk about is the way in which we approach work is completely different today. And there's a new set of leaders who are coming into the space who are looking to be more nimble and flexible, because the work-life balance conversation we had a lot earlier was more people are trying to balance that out. But I feel like you being well positioned for the future is doing exactly what you're doing right now and just doing more of it. And the marketplace in itself is going to continue to catch up. So I want to kind of talk about, what does the future of your organization look like? What are some of your goals over the next, let's say, 5 years, and what you're trying to accomplish?
So right now, something that we're developing is some internal tools. And these internal tools, more getting them ready for launch externally, because we have systems and processes inside of our company for the recruitment, the vetting of the talent, different little like tips and tricks that we're using. And we thought, okay, how can we automate some of this? How can we make this into our own like personal tool? We use a lot of automations, make Zapier, low code, no code tools, Bubble, Airtable, those types of things to make things happen very, very efficiently. And so we've built a lot of cool like internal tools that I want to grow into SaaS platforms. And is that an arm of Zaboda? Possibly. Is it a separate company? Possibly. But I know I really enjoy working in the current field that I'm in, helping good people get great jobs, and really just advancing some of this trend that we see. And so I think it's kind of a split. Maybe it's kind of the recruiting tools, and then also just keep on keeping on and snowballing into more success.
Yeah. What do you think about the landscape of AI kind of having an impact? Because I do a lot of work in healthcare, and there's huge hesitancy when it comes to using AI tools. But I look at AI as being an accelerator. As an example, one thing we've noticed about HR directors and HR teams in general, and they are bogged down every single day with the tasks that are super redundant that can be automated. An example, questions about benefits, FMLA, PTO, all these type of things. And so we develop AI conversational chat that allows for team members to text a simple number to be able to get those questions on demand. And we look at AI as being an accelerator to help us do our jobs better, but not replacing that human element, which is so important. But what's kind of your 2 cents on, I would say, the skepticism of AI and why so many people are so hesitant to adopt it?
That's a great solution, by the way. I like that a lot. It reminds me of like if you have like an Apple credit card and you just text for support or like raise credit limit and it's just like instant, you're just inside of the messaging app. I think that's a really great idea. With AI being finance and healthcare are always going to be like some of the last to adopt along with legal. I think marketing and agencies are just like Wild West, like slinging different like ChatGPT wrappers and just like going crazy, right? And so um, AI, we're still very, very like new with some of this stuff, and people may be hesitant to adopt it, but eventually we're going to get to a point where it's doing a lot of the manual tasks that we used to be, and like it or not, that's just how it's going to be. So we better get used to the change because the only thing constant is change.
Yeah, man. I think unless you're ready, until you are ready to stay ready, you're not going to have to get ready. And I feel like a lot of organizations, especially during the pandemic, found themselves in a reactive mode, and that created
Yeah.
so much stress for the organization from a financial perspective, from an ops perspective. And it's like now we have to be able to adopt this technology, which is going to future proof us, as you will, for the future. I want to give you a couple opportunities here. If you had to give advice to an entrepreneur who is kind of early in their journey, maybe they're slinging, Shasta and cosmic brownies out of their locker right now, and they're thinking that they want to be an entrepreneur, how would you kind of fortify their mindset for the future path of, I would say, turbulence that they're going to go through, like you kind of experienced?
Yeah. So this is probably something that might not make sense to them because it wouldn't have made sense if I was speaking to myself. But this is something that is true. Is if you're putting in the work, it will figure itself out in some path. If you're always putting in the work, it may not be on the venture that's that first vehicle. But for me, obviously, it wasn't. Like I had to grow past being a high school age person and actually like make money that was more than a couple $100 a week, right? And so if you always put in the work, it will figure itself out eventually in some way. I've always had opportunities where maybe they're coming to a close and that next opportunity is just perfectly slotted right there because of something I did in the beginning of the previous opportunity. So you may not know why you're going through some of the actions. You may not know why you're learning some of the skills, but it will pay off later in different scenarios, especially if you're that young. You just don't, you've been around for 16 years. Like you don't have a concept of longer time and professional growth and development.
How do you think
So
about, and
it'll figure itself out if you put in the work.
yeah, man, I feel like the work works on us more than we work on the work often. You know what I mean? That's one of my
Yeah.
favorite sayings. So my question is, how do you kind of balance, the mindset of instant gratification with accomplishing big goals? Because as I get older, I recognize that I think in longer time horizons to accomplish my goals. Because often the quickest way to build something to $1 million is not the quickest way to build something to 10 million bucks. So how do you kind of balance that instant gratification mindset with the long time horizon that's needed to kind of accomplish our goals?
So that's a really great question. I think that's something I had struggled with pretty recently. I didn't think it was going to take as much hard work and as long as it has, even though it's only been a year and a half. I look more on my journey as like since I was like 16. So we're looking at 8 years of work and then trying to make money online and build a business or various businesses. The time is going to pass like anyway, so you might as well be trying to like make it happen and make your vision work, because I'm going to be eventually significantly older, family of my own, and those types of things. And now is the time to take risks and move forward. So you can't like compare yourself to others. And I know that's just like so cliche, but you really can't because their journeys are very independent of yours. They have pros and cons about their current situation. You have pros and cons about yours, but you shouldn't waste time wishing you were in someone else's ship and boat because there's cracks that you probably don't see. And so you're in your position for a reason. If you move quickly, you'll be able to change that position.
I love that, man. The thing that I want to create as a unique opportunity here, I know you're not prepared for this, but what I want to do is I want to ask you, can you pose a question for the next guest on the podcast? If you had to ask another entrepreneur, somebody else who was in the midst of their grind, what they were trying to accomplish or something that you wanted to dive into their mindset or about their business, what would you kind of ask that next guest?
Wow, that's a really good one. And I had a couple that came to mind, but then I thought those aren't actually like useful. I had thought about like, oh, what would have been like one of your greatest sacrifices? Well, hearing that isn't very encouraging. It's very much like, dang, this person had to give up like relationships and things like that. So that wouldn't be a good question to ask them. Their mindset, I would probably ask them about when did they realize that this was the venture for them? When was that kind of first kind of sparks of the venture where they realize, okay, this is what I'm going to do? I think everyone has a shift in their mindset where they're like, okay, I guess I'm the LinkedIn guy, or I guess I'm the telehealth person. I guess I'm the staffing person. I remember having that shift and being like, okay, this is very real. I'm in control. And so I want to ask about that. When was that kind of, you're in control of your own ship? When was that apparent?
I love that, man. Well, I just want to say, bro, this has been an absolutely amazing conversation. It's been so cool being able to kind of get to know you, the mindset, the origin story, the battles you've gone through, the mindset shifts, the things that you've accomplished, also your goals for the future, and kind of how you're building, your organization. I just want to kind of give you a nod as somebody who is many years ahead of you. Time does fly incredibly quickly, and you just got to continue to do the work, and the results come as a natural kind of consequence of that. And so I'm super proud to kind of, be in the room with you, to be able to kind of see the mindset that you've developed, the leaps that you've taken, because when we're older, it's the things that we didn't try, you know what I mean, that we'll regret the most. And I feel like we both put ourselves in a position to be successful and be happy later in life. And I just want to say thanks for coming on the show, man. It's been a blast.
Hey, Keenan, thank you so much. The pleasure's been mine. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely. Guys, thanks once again for checking in on the Hart and Hustle podcast. That's a wrap.